back in, man. The shot caller. He jumped on the kid's head, man. He ended his life. He died. What do you think that dude was thinking about when he was getting stabbed? Oh, man, it's enough. Do you think he was like, damn, man, I'm going to die, man. This is it. That shit happens in prison, man. And that's what you should be thinking about, man, when you're in the street. Think about it, man. Look at those pictures, man. This ain't about scaring you from going to prison. It's about giving you what's real and what's raw, man. That this could be you in that cell. Don't matter what color you are. Don't matter what gang you're in. This shit could happen to you, man. There's vicious, vicious people, man, all over the place. Another gang that I think played no games. And I was actually cool with a couple of these cats. Ran into them. I seen them get busy. The Texas Syndicate, man. Like, these dudes go hard, man. These dudes go hard. The Texas Syndicate includes its leadership, memberships, and associates. Constitutes an enterprise defined by Title 18 U.S. Code Section 1961. That is a group of individuals associated in fact. The enterprise constitutes an ongoing organization whose members function as a continuing unit for common purpose of achieving the objectives of the enterprise. They will bottle you up in the feds, man. You're part of a gang or criminal organization, they will take your ass to court, man. And they will throw away the key. That could be your neighborhood gang, man. It could be the Bloods. It could be the Crips. It could be the Dirty White Boy gang. It could be the Texas Syndicate. The Texas Syndicate originated in the early 1970s in the California prison system as a response to other prison gangs that were preying on native Texas inmates. These Texas offenders banded together for protection purposes and became known as one of the most feared prison gangs within the California prison system. After being released from California prisons, these inmates returned to Texas, often returning to violence and re-entering the prison system. As a result, members were able to expand their control throughout the Texas Department of Criminal Justice prison system. Since the late 1970s, the TDCJ has seen a gradual increase in TS-related activities within the system, and the Texas Syndicate remains one of the main security threats within the Texas Department of Correctional and Justice. TS rules are strictly enforced, primarily resulting in violent attacks on and executions of TS members who violate their rules. Furthermore, that degree of control is carried to communities in which TS members reside. Once out of prison, many TS members continue to commit violent offenses, narcotic-related offenses, and other illegal activities in the area of the country where the members are living and associated with each other. The gang is commonly referred to as Sindicato, Tijuana, SAT, Twisted Sister, Teresa Sanchez, and Cuernos. TS membership is comprised predominantly of Texas-born Mexican-American males and operates under a formal paramilitary organizational structure with a constitution and strict established rules. The Texas Syndicate members frequently refer to each other as carnal, brother, and maintain a distinct identity by establishing and enforcing specific TS rules, holding meetings, utilizing TS gang signs, horns, and by maintaining a close relationship with fellow gang members and their associates throughout the state. Some but not all TS members have TS tattoos. These tattoos commonly include horns and words containing the letters T and S. Like I said, man, I was with these cats, man. I was on a bus to USP Pollock with some of them. And when we got there, there were these two paisas in a cell. And they didn't really say who they were or who they rode with, but the heavy-set kid came out and the cuffs came off. He came right out of the cell. And he pretty much told the cops, hey, I can't go in there, man. I'm a paisa, man. All them dudes in there are TSs. And the old man that was sitting with the heavy-set kid, the younger kid, the TS dudes were like, yo, man, you were sitting with dude, man. Who you run with, fool? And I remember this. The dude stood up. Old man, I'm in the cell with these cats. And the old man said, paisa! And these dudes just destroyed this dude, man. Like he was an old man. And he was in there trying to fight, man. It didn't last long. Cops ran in there, separated it. But the old man was pretty beat up, man. Within 2 minutes. I'm talking about viciously beat up. They hit the deuces. They run in there. These dudes don't play games, man. They get busy. I was also with them in USP Lee. And they had kept these dudes in the hole, man, for like a year. And finally they had to release them. But they couldn't release them on the yard because it was really a paisa yard, right? Bunch of paisas. So they locked us down, let them dudes out. So they were letting them out, built them up, made them think they were getting out. They let them out for like 2 hours. I believe it was either on Thanksgiving or Christmas. They were outside. They were playing basketball. And then they locked them back up in the hole. And these dudes weren't having it, man. They got busy. They went to the rec cages the next day. And they fought the cops, man, for, I don't know, man, a good 14, 15 hours. They climbed the cages. They were fighting. They were throwing shit. They're in there shooting bombs. But these dudes definitely handle their business, man. Are they brutal? They are. They handle their business. But the one thing that people should think about when I talk about these gangs and them handling their business, the TS fighting, the Paisas and Paisas fighting the TS, or the SAC dudes, killing their own, or fighting this other white gang, or beefing with the DWBs, or the Bloods fighting the Crips, or the, Norteños fighting the Sureños. The one thing they should be thinking about is what I always say, man. Together we can conquer as one will fail. We forget the mission, man. It's not the mission no more. The mission is, hey, man, let's fight each other. But really the mission should be, man, about change. About bettering our conditions, bettering us as people, man. Education, getting out of prison and being real fathers, real leaders, real men. But instead, we fight each other, man. We fight each other. We commit vicious violence on each other. And I could say that. I'm white, man. White dudes commit vicious violence on other white dudes in prison like you wouldn't believe, man. It's unbelievable. MS-13. Everybody knows about MS-13, right? They're definitely on my list, man. And I've been with a bunch of these dudes, man, in different prisons. And I remember one dude, man, from MS-13. I was with him actually in an immigration facility. They used to house us in these immigration facilities when I first got arrested. It was a new phenomenon to arrest every crack dealer in the street and send them to federal prison. And they had nowhere to put us. So the U.S. Marshals would contract beds at the immigration facility, and that's where they would house us. And I never knew anything about MS-13. I met this dude. He was from El Salvador. And I remember him going in the thing, man, and taking food out of the trays people ate. He would just dump all the food on a plate, man. And he'd eat the food that other people, had ate off of and put in the cart to go back to the kitchen. We used to eat in the unit. And after everyone put their trays back, he'd take all the food. And I started talking to him like, yo, what's up, man? Why do you eat that food? He had broken English. He's like, man, in my country, you'd be surprised. And then I seen the MS tattoos on him when he was working out. Started talking. He started telling me about MS-13. I was just like, damn, bro. And this dude took no shit from nobody, man. Argued with the cops. Was ready whenever. And I seen him end up getting in a fight, man, with a black dude over the pull-up bar. And for real, man, he put in that work, man. He was kicking the dude, jumping on him. They ended up breaking up the fight. But that was my introduction to MS-13. Then when I got to Big Sandy, the MS dudes kind of ran with the Sureños and under the Mexican mafia. Always, man, ready for violence. Always ready to get busy. Played no games. And then later on, I would end up in Raybrook with one of the dudes that I was actually at Big Sandy with. He had 60 years. Caught a case, I believe it was out of either Baltimore or New York. I tried to help him out with a clemency petition. Really good dude, man. He started going to church. He was just a really good kid, man. But he had 60 years. And it was killing him inside. He had a beautiful girlfriend that he had met on the pen pal site. And he was like, Chad, man, I just want to go home, bro. I just want to be with my family, man. He said, even if they gave me 30 years. I'm like, wow, man. Even if they gave you 30 years. Can you imagine saying that? Even if they gave me 30 years, at least I would be able to get out. And he's like, man, I got 16 in. I could get out. And I was in a unit with this kid named Sniper. And Sniper was talking about how he was going to get deported, right? He was a tattoo artist. Really good tattoo artist, man. And he's like, look, man, he used to call me Shad. Shad. He couldn't say Chad. He'd call me Shad. He said, Shad, I go back to my country. They're going to kill me, man. He didn't really want to even go home. He didn't want to be deported. He didn't want to get out of jail. He told me that he'd rather be in prison than get deported. He said, because when he gets to the airport, and he said the American government knew this, that the police will take you behind the airport. If no one comes to pick you up, they'll take you behind the airport and shoot you in the head. Just kill you, man. I was with a bunch of them kids that got arrested in Maryland. They were soccer players, man. They had their own MS soccer team. Then they ended up with a soccer team where they linked up with the Sureños. And for real, man, a large majority of them dudes came across as really good dudes. But they also came across as dudes that were like, yo, we will get busy. We'll do whatever it takes, man. And like I said, I was friends with a couple of them, man. Got some insight, talked to them, asked them some questions, wanted to learn a little bit. Let's read a little bit, right? Many MS-13 members were deported to El Salvador after the close of the Salvadorian Civil War in 1992, or upon being arrested, facilitating the spread of the gang to Central America. The gang is currently active in many parts of the continental United States, Canada, Mexico, and Central America. Most members are Central American, Salvadorians in particular. As an international gang, its history is closely tied to United States-El Salvador relations. In 2018, the gang's U.S. membership of up to 10,000 accounted for less than 1% of the 1.4 million gang members in the United States, and a similar share of gang members. The gang is often referenced by the United States Republican Party to advocate for stricter immigration policies. We all see that with Trump, right? In the very beginning, MS-13 was a group of young delinquent heavy metal fans who lived in Los Angeles. However, the undocumented community in Los Angeles was subject to severe racial prejudice and persecution. Under these conditions, MS-13 began to mutate into a gang. Originally, the gang's main purpose was to protect Salvadorian immigrants from the other, more established gangs of Los Angeles, who were predominantly composed of Mexicans, Asians, and African Americans. Some of the original members of MS-13 adhered to Satanism, and while the majority of contemporary MS-13 members do not identify as Satanists, the Satanist influence is still seen in some of their symbolism. I was with another kid that was in Ray Brook. He had worked his way down, and he had caught his case in New York City. And he was a good little dude, man. Used to make pots and all kinds of stuff in the little ceramic class. I tried to help him, man. And he asked me, I didn't know this kid had a life sentence. You would have never, ever expected this kid to have life. And he came to me like, hey, man, can you help me out with my appeal? They denied my COA, certificate of appealability. So I said, yeah, man, let me see it, man. Let me look. And I'm reading it, and I'm like, wow, man. And I want you to know this, man, because if you're a young man, this is what I want you to know. This man was offered 30 years, plea offer, and he refused it. And I know when you're 17 or 18, you can't see 30 years. 30 years is distant. It's far away. It's not something you can comprehend. And he couldn't comprehend it. And he ended up going to trial. What was his crime? Him and his homies went out for a ride. They seen a black dude. They thought he was someone else from a different gang. They thought he was a blood. And they shot him. They shot him in New York City, and they killed him. Turns out this kid wasn't a blood. He wasn't a gang member. He was a dude walking home from work, man. And they killed him. They shot him to death. And now, the rest of his life is going to be spent in federal prison. Tried to help him with his appeals, things like that. It was a no-win situation. And really, I helped him, man, to try to give him a little bit of hope, man. Kid, like I said, you would never know that's what he was in prison for. But he fucked his whole life off as a teenager. He took it, he balled it up, and he shot it, man. He shot it into the wastebasket. And I can tell you that every day that he was in prison, he regretted it. He used to tell me, damn, Chad, man, I wish I'd have took that 30 years, man. But back then, man, 30 years, it seemed like it was the rest of my life. But if I'd have got 30, I would have got out in 25, man. Now I'm going to die in here, huh? He used to ask me, I'm going to die in here, huh, Chad? I try to give him hope, man. So one guy, Ralph, just kind of was passive. I say, hey, man, the laws are changing. You got to keep fighting. You can't give up. And that's not to say that I approved of his crime, because I didn't. But it bothers me, man, when young kids make irrational, irresponsible choices. And two people die. One dies and goes in a coffin. The other one dies by incarceration. Death by incarceration, man. And if you're watching this video, I don't want to see you end up in prison. Death by incarceration. The last gang that I say is brutal, and you guys heard me say it time and time again, in federal prison. We're not talking about West Coast prisons. We're not talking about California prisons. We're talking about federal prison. Aryan Brotherhood of Texas. You guys all heard my stories about Dinky. Brutal. These guys were brutal, man. They would do bad things to people for no reason, man. Straight up. Straight up. Founded in the early 1980s, the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas, also known as the ABT, the Tip and Ace Deuce, is an unrelated knockoff of the racist prison gang Aryan Brotherhood. It is one of the deadliest prison gangs in the Texas Department of Prisons, and also a statewide crime syndicate. Like the Aryan Brotherhood, the ABT has a strict hierarchical leadership structure and has members both inside the state's prisons and on the streets. The gang follows the late terrorist David Lane's 14 words, a white supremacist motto: we must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. Unlike many other more flamboyant racist prison gangs, Members of the ABT pride themselves on being anonymous and their ability to blend in the general population as suburban gangsters on the outside. Man, in the 1970s, under the direction of the Texas Department of Corrections, Chief George Beto, Texas Prisons used a brutal trustee system in which correctional officers used certain inmates known as building tenders to carry out physical punishments of other inmates. Wow. That's something else they did in the feds, man. We're going to do a video about it, where the police wanted you to police your own. They didn't want to deal with the problems. One of your guys did something wrong, beat the shit out of them. One of them did something wrong, stab them. One of them did something wrong, kill them. You guys handle it. The officers favored white inmates as their tenders, and these men had nearly total control behind the walls. But that system was finally abolished in 1980 as a result of the federal court case of Ruiz versus Estelle, and inmates began to organize along racial lines to fill the power void. White inmates who were a minority in the prison system were particularly angry after being stripped of their power. And in 1981, a group of them decided to form a prison gang along racial lines. The group included ABT co-founder Bobby Adams. He reached out to the Aryan Brotherhood in California, which was already the nation's most formidable white prison gang, and asked if they could form a Texas affiliate. But they were refused. In the end, the inmates, some of them already belonging to other small gangs, came together as the ABT. The ABT quickly rose to become one of the deadliest prison gangs in Texas, responsible for scores of murders over the years. They aimed to restore white power within prison walls and consider themselves to be new building tenders. They waged war against two rival black Texas prison gangs, the Mandingo Warriors and a self-defense family. Like other white prison gangs, including the Aryan Brotherhood, the ABT has a clearly white supremacist, if somewhat muddled ideology, but it is an ideology that comes second to financial considerations, with members working with non-white criminals or non-white prison gangs if it will be profitable for them to do so. As of 2012, the ABT had an estimated 2,600 members in Texas prisons and another 180 in federal prisons across the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, according to them. Other estimates have put ABT membership at about 3,500 strong, with 1,000 of that number on the street. The group's members are concentrated in Texas, but have spread into prisons of neighboring states, in particular New Mexico. The gang's leadership is believed to be comprised of 5 generals, one for each region of Texas. They are collectively known as the Steering Committee or the Wheel. The generals oversee criminal activity, smuggling, drug trafficking, extortion, and other rackets in the prisons, and a variety of activity including drug running, home invasions, theft, and identity theft outside, and also order incredibly brutal sanctions against any member who breaks the gang's rules. You've heard plenty on these cats, man. I could keep reading, keep telling you about them, but they've done some bad things to people, man. And like I talked about Dinky called shots, man, where you'd be like, wow, man, he called that shot, man? For what? They're brutal, man. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. These dudes do brutal things. Stab you in a minute, hit you in the head with a lock. And I've seen many young kids, man, come to Big Sandy and fall under Dinky's leadership and fuck their lives off, man. We talked about John Pinky. We talked about Russell Scott Olson. Talked about them stabbing Mycelli. Russ destroyed his life, man. Came in with 15 years. Ends up with 40 altogether. 15 and 25. And that's the thing that I'm talking about. I've seen these young kids, man. White kids, black kids, Spanish kids, Mexican kids. Come to prison. And they're looking for leadership. They're looking for leadership. And they find the wrong leadership. And before they know it, they're glamorizing people. They're idolizing people. Like I talked about Stevie Burke. Dudes in our car idolize this dude, man. They would do anything for him. If he said, hey, man, stab this dude, they're like, yo, I'm first. I want to do it. And I seen through that shit, man. By the grace of God, I was able to understand, hey, man, who is this dude? Think about this dude, Chad. He's a drug addict, man. He's a heroin junkie. He's going to tell you to go do something that he won't do. And when you do it, guess what? You're going to fuck your whole life off. And before long, it'll be your own people that want to destroy you, that want to stab you, that want to leave 70 holes in you for some reason. They're going to make something up. Instead of punishing that dude, remember we talked about the SAG dude earlier? Could have just beat him up, right? Did they have to go in there and stab him 70 times? This was their brother, a dude that they took pictures with. a dude that they ate with, a dude that they hung out with. He cried out for his life. And they took it, man. Following a gang leader, man. Following this dude who will tell you what to do. Then when the time comes, when you need them, they probably won't be there. But who are you? Look in the mirror, man. Who are you? Are you chasing a false dream? If you do end up in prison, what choices are you going to make? You're going to go in with a 7, 8, 9 year sentence and never leave? Do you want to be strapped to that deathbed like Ricky Fackrell? He's going to be strapped to that bed, man. It's a sad day. It's a sad day when you walk into prison, a young man, and you have an out date. You're going home in 9 years, 10 years. And the next thing you know, not only are you not going home, but you're going to die here. And in fact, you're going to still die when you're a young man, more than likely. How old will Ricky Fackrell be when he dies? 47, 48, 45? Going to prison 18, 19 years old? And they're going to pump that poison into his veins and he's going to die there. That's the moral of the story, man. It ain't just about who's the most dangerous, who's the most brutal. It ain't about glorifying prison. And it ain't about glorifying prison gangs. It's about telling you that that shit is real, man. That shit is raw, that you could lose your life, that you could be victimized. And nobody's going to care. Nobody. And you might be victimized by your own people. Blood on the razor wire. With respect, until tomorrow, man, we're out.